Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Alienoid, a Korean science fiction action movie from 2022. It's very difficult to briefly summarize the story of this movie. If you look at its Wikipedia page, it's the length of a dissertation just describing the plot, but I'll try here. The opening narration of the film says, "For ages, aliens locked up their prisoners in humans' bodies, but the humans were not aware of this. Sometimes, prisoners escaped the human bodies. They called these acts breakouts." And the story basically takes place in multiple time periods, primarily the modern day and the 1300s. It revolves around a handful of characters, one of whom is an alien who's presented in human form, and he monitors and catches other aliens who attempt to break out of their human bodies. There's also a little human girl who the alien adopted after a prior breakout event. In a nutshell, we see how these different alien breakout events impact these handful of characters from both time periods. And that's basically your story here. Now, the opening 20 minutes of this movie, the first time you watch it, a little bit difficult to get into and track. There's a lot of characters that are introduced, and it's kind of confusing. Although it did make a lot more sense when I rewatched the opening 20 minutes after the movie was over. In any case, I found myself becoming more engaged with the film once we get to the little girl character who lives in present day. And there's like a little kid sense of wonder that she contributes to the film that kind of helped lock me into the story. And she was quite amusing in her eventual acceptance of finding out that her adopted father was an alien. So you have a little bit of humor there. Now, over time, you do get a feel for these handful of characters that the story revolves around, even though they're only like slightly developed. This isn't like a deep movie, all right? Script writing is nothing that great, and the villain is kind of thin in terms of, multidimensionality. However, the clashing of historical, present day, and futuristic concepts makes this movie like way more interesting than it would have been otherwise. And there are like combinations of things in this movie, Alienoid, that I've never seen before in a Korean film. Precisely because they mix the two different time periods of Korean history with aliens. You know what I mean? Science fiction type concepts. You have to give them credit for their creativity here, because there is some creativity in this. And there are a few twists that come along that I did enjoy. Also, the good guy aliens really aren't good guys when you consider that they, for ages have infused these bad guy aliens into the bodies of humans without their knowledge. But at least the good guy aliens will attempt to help the humans out when the bad guys escape and attack. But when all is said and done, it's the good guy aliens' fault that all this bad stuff happens in the first place, right? I just noticed that when I was watching the movie. But there is some interesting stuff going on here. The cast has a mix of actors that I really like and others that I'm still kind of assessing or warming up to. Ryoo Joon-yeol has been in a few stinkers in recent years, like Believer, but I did enjoy him in Hit and Run Squad. Kim Woo-bin is in kind of a similar situation for me. He was in a movie called The Con Artists, which kind of stunk, but also a surprisingly funny comedy called 20 that I enjoyed. But the fact that both of these guys were in Alienoid was fine by me, but it wasn't the draw in terms of the acting talent. The big draw for me was Kim Tae-ri, who came out of nowhere in 2016 with The Handmaiden and does a pretty good job at picking interesting roles. In Alienoid, she doesn't even show up until like a third of the way into the film, but she does get a good amount of screen time after that. So if you're a fan of hers, she's a good reason to watch this. But you will need to wait a little bit before she shows up. A few other actors I enjoyed seeing in this film were Jung-ah, the stepmother from A Tale of Two Sisters, and So Ji-sub from the K-drama Sorry, I Love You. So this is a pretty good cast. The director, Choi Dong-hung, did some big-time movies in the past decade. Actually 2 decades. Back in the day, he did Tazza the High Rollers, and then in the 2010s, he did The Thieves and Assassination, and I enjoy all those movies a lot. He also did a movie called Jun-woo-chi, which has some similarities to Alienoid in its use of magic and spellcasting, which is also mixed into, like, the alien stuff. But in this case, it's an element that's, like, infused in with everything else. Whereas in Jun-woo-chi, it was, like, the focus. But thankfully, this director is capable enough to pull all of this off and create an entertaining film. The action kind of shows up in spurts, but it has a nice variety. There's some short chase fight scenes that are peppered throughout the whole movie. I like the first fight scene with Kim Tae-ri, which takes place in the 1300s, and it uses martial arts supplemented with magic. And there's a fight between two humanoid robots at one point that's surprisingly long and enjoyable, despite some heavy use of CGI. But there's I don't even want to say what happens in that scene, because it goes on for a while and it gets kind of unpredictable. And then we go back to more historical fighting and magic again. It's such a bizarre mix of elements in this, but it's just so unique and rare. It gives this movie its own feel, And I did say earlier that some of the storytelling elements are combined in ways that I've never really seen before in a Korean movie. Same could be said for the action elements. I mean, at one point you got an alien android type dude fighting a magician from the 1300s while a time-traveling girl assists them with her handgun. I mean, you don't see that very often, right? And the action is handled well enough to be fun. And there are other little neat nuances too, like a little alien probe that can mimic human beings. There's this weird orange gas cloud that the aliens use at one point. And then, it's just it's some cool stuff in this. Now, in terms of the comedy, there is some comedy in this. I don't think it's as good as some other Korean movies. A little bit on the goofy side. But there's a general charm to it that works. The runtime of this film is 2 hours and 23 minutes. And the ending does kind of set up a sequel. But if they do make a part 2, I would watch it. I enjoyed Alienoid. I think it's something a little bit different for the Korean film industry, and it's fun to watch from a reliable director and it has a good cast. So if an odd mix of these elements that I described just seems interesting to you, I say it's worth checking out. I recommend it. Currently available streaming on Amazon and YouTube, also available on Blu-ray. And I actually will probably add this to my collection. As always, folks, we'll see you next time.